So for anybody who doesn't know me and hasn't heard my spiel, what I'm super into and I've done my entire capstone work on, a lot of work for the past couple of years, is on 3D scanning, printing, and displaying of artifacts and artifact replicas. This is my passion. This is my project I'm very proud of doing. I'm glad I finally have the chance to present it in front of the department. Big special thank you to Bonnie for being so encouraging of this, and for Sarah and Anne for just also being supportive and allowing me access to the DU museum collections. So a bit of background info, why 3D scanning and why printing. So for this, I used the Next Engine laser scanner that we have at the Anthro department. And I chose 3D scanning and printing because it offers a couple different options for preservation of artifacts. That way you can have digital copies. God forbid if something breaks, you have those digital replicas you can fall back on. You can also replicate them in 3D printing. And there's also been some research done in using augmented reality and virtual reality to view these artifacts as well. Smithsonian actually has a really cool thing they did a couple months ago where they dropped over 1,000 different artifacts online on Sketchfab for anybody to be able to view. I just think that's a really cool thing. I highly recommend checking out as well. And that's another version of digital records and preservation as well. And you can also view them in AR and VR if you have the tech for it. The Next Engine laser scanner itself, again, owned by the department. It is a desktop 3D laser scanner. It's not that big at all. It's about like not even the whole size of a person's torso. It's been used a couple times. For example, it was used in 2008 to help scan some Afro-American artifacts, colonial wear artifacts specifically. That's the DAACS. They used it that way they could try to get scans and see more digital replicas available. It was also used by a group of people in 2017 at the University of Iowa, and it was used to 3D scan the replicas. 1 second, Shiloh. Sorry, my cat's trying to knock things over. But it was also used in Iowa by a group of researchers also trying to 3D scan and get replicas of artifacts. They were wanting to do some partial reconstructions, and they ended up posting about 7 different artifacts online, also on Sketchfab. It has some limitations. For example, anything larger than about a 5 by 5 by 5 inch cube, it can't really print, or not print, sorry, can't really scan. Also can't scan anything that's extremely reflective. That's a large issue, like let's say something made out of obsidian. It's just too reflective, so the scanner can't quite get a good handle on that. Within those limitations, I chose artifacts that were not really reflective in themselves and also were within my space requirement. I also specifically chose no artifacts that were of any like biological besides a coconut bowl, or any more material for clothing, because that would be hard to replicate in itself. I didn't want to deal with trying to replicate clothing. My methodology was, first off, I partnered with Dr. Sarah Carlson to do a selection of artifacts that would be all right with the DU Museum for me to use for a minute. I went through 3D scanning of all of them, of course. I went in about 5 days a week, 5-ish hours a day doing 3D scanning of different artifacts until I had them all done. From there, once I had all my scans nice, neat, and pretty, I went and I 3D printed them on my own home 3D printer. If anybody wants to see it later, it's in the next room. I'll gladly show you guys. And then after that, I went back to work with Dr. Sarah Carlson to figure out what kind of display we wanted to do for it, how we wanted to outline these different artifacts, and different things we wanted to get across for people viewing it. Because the whole point of this in the end was to create an interactive exhibit for anybody to be able to touch artifact replicas while being able to simultaneously look at their originals. This is just a small selection of the artifacts chosen. Overall, there was 19 different artifacts that we scanned, and out of those 19, I printed 18 of them. Only one of them I was unable to 3D print, and it was an oil lamp that was very much so curved in, and I couldn't quite get under those curves. That was the only one I wasn't able to replicate. These figures, these are just all the artifacts. This is a little bit of information on each of them. We specifically chose for the display purposes not to display all the information written here, just more what the artifact is and where it's from. For 3D scanning, I again use the Next Engine laser scanner. There's a fun technique you have to do in the scanner. You can't just do one scan and call it good. You do a single 360 scan to start, going all around the object. For example, using this wonderful beer can, my 360 scan will go all around it, but it won't get this top part or this bottom part. So I have to do a second sideways scan. That way I can get everything else I'm missing, and from there merge those 2 scans together to create my complete artifact, or in this case, a complete beer can. Some problems that I had was making sure there were no holes in the meshes and making sure all my scans were very complete. From that, it was just a lot of time, trial and error, going through digitally on my computer to make sure everything was put exactly as it needed to be, and there was no funky data issues that I had to deal with. The scanner would also capture itself in its secondary part. There's a small stand everything had to stand on. So I had to make sure that there was none of that stand data as well that was captured, or else it would mess up my merging and then mess up my overall scans. It's a bit of a time-consuming process, but kind of like putting together a weird puzzle, and I personally really enjoy doing it. You can see there's a small video. I'm going to turn down my own volume. This is a video of a 3D printer in action going, so you can take a look and see kind of what it's doing. But for 3D printing, the printer in the video isn't the one I use. I use a DaVinci Junior 2.0 printer. It's a 2-color printer. It also can only print in about a 5x5 by 5 inch cube, so that gave me some good limitations at the next engine scanner's abilities, and my own 3D printer's abilities kind of matched. I use PLA for it, which is polylithic acid. It is biodegradable, it's extremely durable, and it has a melting point over 200 degrees Celsius. So it's thankfully it's going to last through a couple different elements and a couple different weathering things. Infill for all of these also is only 5%, and what that means is that the entire artifacts themselves, they're mostly hollow on the inside. Only 5% of it is filled, and it's filled in this crisscrossing pattern. On the inside, I don't have the inside of any of them in front of me, or else I would show it to you. It helps cut down on filament costs though used, and the 5% infill still has the same durability as though it was full and intact. I also sanded everything down at 4 different levels. That way it would have a nice smooth finish to the end of it, and there would be no rough edges from the 3D printing process. And I could do what I could to try and max the texture of the original artifact through doing some of the sanding. From there, display setup. We did, of course, some condition reporting, as you can see with photo of Funky Me with the condition reporting glasses. I just liked wearing those. Those were fun. I worked with Dr. Sarah Carlson again to develop a couple different themes. That way we could have a good idea of what this display was going to be about. We also chose not all of the artifacts scanned for it. We only chose about 9 of them to be displayed. If you count, we had Oya sherds, and so we kind of counted those as separate and individual at the same time because they went together. We want to pick ones that would really get across both people wanting to interact with this, and also that these replications have a couple more uses than just, hey, look, pretty, I can touch it. I can look at the original and touch this. It was a really fun process. I've never actually put together a museum exhibit before, and I was really thankful to Dr. Carlson for working with me on this, and Dr. Amati for loaning me a book. That way I could get all my labels done. Dr. Amati, I still have your book, by the way. We'll figure out a way for me to get it back to you. Also, I'd like to thank Sydney and Jerry for looking over my labels as well, and everybody who did look over those labels. I had a lot of help in creating them because I had never made labels before. As you can see, I have a small label called Don't Steal. That one was placed directly with all the artifact replicas. That way people would know quite simply, please don't take them. Oddly enough, this worked. Not a single one of those artifact replicas went missing. I don't know if they're still there because I haven't been on DU campus since quarantine, but I know none of them went missing during the duration of the exhibit itself. I'm going to call that a big win. The final display view was on one side, you had all the artifact originals displayed along with different themes that we decided where they would correlate with. You also have the next engine scanner on display. And then directly the other side of it are its counterparts, all 3D printed. They were all done in white because honestly, I was not feeling like I could paint them to match the originals. So white was my best guess, but you could still feel them and feel different textural things, different indents as the originals. And you could walk over to pick up the replica to the originals and be able to compare it without causing any damage to the originals at all because they're in this nice, pretty glass case. It was up till April 1st. It's no longer up as far as I know. It was on the 2nd floor of Sturm, right across from the student study hall. I thought that was a good location itself because sadly our 1st floor doesn't get as much foot traffic as that 2nd floor. Being right across from that student study suite, it provided a bit more opportunity for people being able to walk by and see it. It's a pretty good location, in all honesty. There's also a spot right nearby with some chairs where I could just sit and watch and see how people were interacting with it, but we'll get into that data in just a minute. First off, for surveying my demographics, I had 2 open answer demographic questions, which was age and gender, just so I could get a general idea of who was going around, see if there's any common themes like, hey, females over 20 really like this. Males over 40 do not, just in case that showed up. I also had a couple easy research questions. That way it would be a very short survey. Most of them on that scale of 1 to 10, trying to compare how people enjoy the original traditional museum experience of look, don't touch versus this interactive option I was presenting them. And then at the bottom, I wanted to leave some open answer questions, one relating directly with on a scale of 1 to 10, how much did physically interacting with the artifact replicas change your perspective or understanding on the artifact itself? I want an explanation on that because I want to see if people could explain, hey, I really like this. It helps show how it could have been used versus somebody who could say, honestly, this wasn't useful at all. I could have gotten the same information from looking at it. I want to see what kind of comparison I could draw from that open answer question. And then finally, an open feedback option at the very bottom in case there was something I missed that people viewing the exhibit would really want me to know. For this survey, I didn't post it anywhere on social media. I specifically wanted it only for people who had interacted with the exhibit. So my options for survey takers sadly were limited to, again, only people who were at the exhibit and either took it from me on an iPad or scanned the QR code that was also with the interactive exhibits. It was just people who wanted to take the survey more or less. And fun fact, standing next to an exhibit with an iPad saying you have a survey makes people a lot less inclined to look at your exhibits. That was an interesting hurdle to get through. I ended up more springing up on people after they'd seen it, being like, hi, I'm Kylie, I did this. If you really like it, would you mind taking this survey on the iPad or scanning the QR code to do it later? That was the best I was able to get to. Thank you, Bonnie, for letting me use an iPad from the department. I really appreciated that. This is my data results. I was actually pretty happy with my results, even though I only had about 20 people take my survey in total. That was my goal I was reaching for. And I was able to get some good info. For these first two questions, they're mostly on that traditional museum experience of look, don't touch, so I could see this kind of comparison of how people enjoy the original experience versus, again, that physical interactive experience. As you can see, just that traditional experience has more middling answers, nothing really solid yes or solid no. A lot of it just in that 5 to 6 range, with a couple of 7s, 8s, and 9s in between for the first one. However, if you move into how people view the interactive options, there's not a single answer below a 6. Everybody absolutely enjoyed these interactive options. They truly thought that this changed the way they viewed the experience or the exhibit somehow. And that honestly made me feel kind of good about this work. It's one thing being able to believe it in yourself, but it's another thing seeing your data prove, hey, people actually do enjoy this. There is a spot for this in the coming world, and it's good research to keep up on. Some other interactions, this is from me sitting next to it and watching to seeing what people did. I noticed a lot of what I was seeing is people who definitely didn't take the survey. They just more of looked over and glanced at it and kept walking wherever they were going. However, the people who did stop to look at things and did stop to interact with things usually stayed for about 3 to 5 minutes, with artifacts they interacted with more being the little tiny pig figurine, as you would have seen pictured earlier, the 2 Oya shirts I have because they fit together, or weirdly enough, one, I don't actually remember what the third one was. I think it was the mug, in all honesty. Everybody had their own thing they kind of wanted to touch, and people were happy to get to touch things, but definitely the pig and the 2 Oya shirts that fit together were the most popular of them. This is my demographic data answers. Most of my survey participants were unsurprisingly female, just because I had a lot of females also in my data that were the ones who were walking by. A lot of males didn't even look at it. And my age trends were also, unsurprisingly enough, in the 20s. It's a college campus. I'm not surprised about that, but I was happy to also get results from a bit of some sort of an age range, people in their 30s, 40s, or 50s. It just helps me be able to look at how different people view it a little bit more. From there, my open answers on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being not at all and 10 being very much. How much did physically interacting with the artifact replicas change your perspective? Yada, yada. This is that open answer to the first question. I turned it into a word cloud. As you can see, there's a lot of positive results in that word cloud. Object, able, hold, better, handle, made, interact. All these open answers specifically are in connection with them being able to touch things and enjoying it. A lot of the open answers were extremely positive, connotating on how it was a very positive experience for them, and that it was enjoyable, that in some way it helped reshape how they learned a bit about these artifacts and how they were used. Also, for the last question, anything else that they would like to tell me as a researcher? Words such as impaired, replicated, cool, weight, replicas, museums, awesome. Again, a lot of positive comment and feedback. The weight one refers to people questioning how well the artifact replicas mimicked the weight of the originals. Sadly, even though that was something I wanted to try and accomplish, I just did not have the time in this research capacity to do, but it's something I'd like to do later on in the future. All I can say is that no, sadly, my replicas did not accurately represent the weight of the originals. And as for impaired, there was actually a lot of reference to how this kind of a tangible interactive exhibit could help people who are neurodiverse, who are not quite exactly fitting in as a stereotypical norm. For example, somebody who might be visually impaired could actually touch something versus relying on the descriptions of others. Someone who might be impaired because they feel weird or uncomfortable to read all that text, it just doesn't work for their brain. It gives them a new way to kinesthetically adapt to the area and adapt to learning. I thought that was a really good thing to touch on because that's something I wanted to try and get across too, was that this tangible new experience offered more than just everybody could touch it. It reaches a couple more audiences than most people might think. Moving forwards, there's a couple improvements I would do. Obviously, I'd paint all the artifacts, or I'd find somebody who's a lot more artistically inclined to help me paint them. I would like to do more research and work and try and figure out how to replicate the weight, and then for future displays, keep doing things like this as well. I truly think there's a good opportunity in the future for more displays with this type of interactivity and the artifact replicas alongside their originals. I've also seen research in digital displays. Like I said earlier, the Smithsonian's put a bunch of different artifacts in. More and more people, especially with things being locked down now, are sharing historical and cultural things online. I think there's a lot of opportunities for digital displays, especially because you can still keep the scan data of the 3D models and be able to share that as well to create some sort of a digital museum. Some different research done that was just in this single PowerPoint alone. There's a lot more I did. My bibliography was, everything was so long. Photo credits, thank you to Jerry Avia for taking some photos I used in this. I had some personal screenshots as well. Word cloud and the noun project were also extremely useful in creating my nice little word clouds. It was a pretty fun day. Thank you all very much for dealing with my spiel one more time.